Dr. Grace, you still there? Okay, well, listen, I'm going to ask you a question. I hope I'm not setting you up too badly here, but do you have any opinion? Do you have any observations? I know you've kept up with this birth certificate, cold case posse, Sheriff Arpaio, Mike Zullo saga, and I know you've kept up with the fact that the investigation has gone deeper and darker than ever before, and they're getting ready to release some, what Mike Zullo said was universe-shattering information. But in the midst of that, and with putting out all that information, and Mike Zullo saying that it was going to come out around March, he said that in WND in a big headline article, the next thing that happens newsworthy is the director of the Department of Health, who was deeply involved in this whole birth certificate scenario, mysteriously dies in a plane crash. Ms. Fuddy, do you have any observations or comments on that? I mean, just a nasty coincidence, or do you smell a rat? What do you think?
Well, I think it is extremely disturbing. I was floored when I read that report. You have this woman who is apparently one of the key people that certified that birth certificate, the long form certificate. Yeah. She dies in a plane crash under what is apparently very mysterious circumstances. Yeah. What is really shocking, Carl, is that there are conflicting accounts about what happened on that plane. Yeah. You have somebody who said that the plane, obviously there was some kind of engine problem, and then the plane glided on the water. Yeah. And all of the passengers that were in that plane managed to be rescued, with the exception of Miss Fuddy. Yeah. And there is one eyewitness who says that he saw her exiting the plane and going into the water like everybody else, that he was shocked that it was later determined that she didn't make it. He didn't understand how that could be. Right. And then there's another conflicting report that says that Miss Fuddy remained within the fuselage of the plane, that she never got out of the plane. Yeah. So we have two widely divergent accounts about what happened. In addition, there's going to now there are demands for an investigation and obviously an autopsy. Right. Because we want to know what exactly caused this woman to die. It is obvious that that plane crash did not incur any life-threatening injuries on any of the passengers. Right. Why would she be any different than the other passengers on that plane? Right. Why does she end up dead and the rest of them don't? Right. And she just happens to be tied to this investigation, which Mike Zullo has said is universe-shattering, and it just happens to happen a couple of months before the information is going to be released, after WND reports that it's going to be released in March. It's just and in fact, weird stuff. She also had proclaimed that she was going to make an announcement. So we don't know what it is that she was going to say, but all I can say is that I don't want to sound like a conspiracy nut here, but when you have this person that appears to be a key witness in one of the major dramas of our time, suddenly dying under mysterious circumstances, it certainly made my flesh crawl. Right. It's certainly a story I'm going to keep an eye on, and I want to see what the investigation uncovers. Well, listen, I know you're a top-notch journalist, and you're an amazing person overall, and so please, and I know you won't, and I know you just said that kind of off the side of your mouth there, but please don't let anybody scare you, and I know you don't scare easily, into not doing what you do best because you're afraid you might be seen as a conspiracy nut. Because let me remind you, all my years in law enforcement, let me remind you, almost every crime always begins with a conspiracy. And a good cop and a good journalist's job is to start with a conspiracy theory, and then take the evidence where it takes you, and if it turns out that it is nothing more than fallacy, then report that. But if it moves from conspiracy theory to conspiracy fact, then you have a crime. So don't worry about it, Dr. Grace. Just do your duty. Excellent. Yeah, well said. As an officer of the law with all your investigative training, I take that advice very dearly. I think that's very, very well said. Another way of saying is a hypothesis, right? A conspiracy theory is another word for a hypothesis. Right. And what you have done, you've looked at all the evidence, and right now it just doesn't add up. So it's good for you to have a conspiracy theory, because the evidence doesn't add up. But after you investigate it and you say, oh, okay, I see now, there's just a terrible coincidence. Okay, fine, then just say it. That's your job. Or you may uncover something that will shock you, and you can report on that. Indeed, absolutely, Carl. So I thank you for asking me the question, and it is definitely a story that I'm keeping a very watchful eye on. As I said, it's very alarming. The circumstances are very strange. And one of the things that I find most interesting when I read a story is also to read many of the comments, because as you know, Carl, some key tips are usually anonymous comments left on stories of sites.
Yep.
And I know that as a journalist, many times you have people within departments who are afraid to speak, but they want somebody to investigate.
Yeah.
And they leave a tip anonymously within the comments.
Yeah.
And I encourage the audience out there to read the stories and then read a lot of the comments.
Right.
Because it appears, and again, this is from anonymous sources, you just need to investigate it further so it's not confirmed, but there are those who are suggesting there were others in the Department of Hawaii Department of Health who were alarmed by the actions that Ms. Fuddy took. In the release of the certificate, that there were certain protocols that were violated.
Right.
So again, there's just a whole range of suspicious activity revolving around her actions and her death.
You're absolutely right, and you've nailed it, and we're out of time. But I can tell you, knowing what I know, when Zulu unveils all the information they have in hard copy, I think you're going to be able to put two and two together on a lot of this. Thank you, Dr. Grace. God bless you for being on the show today.
Thank you, Carl. Have a great one.
We'll see you next Friday. All right. Well, folks, you're listening to Carl Gallups on this Freedom Friday, the Oval Office of Gulf Coast Talk Radio. Mallory Bardwell, your world-famous producer. Bill Martinez from Southern California, up next. Stay tuned.